What is the real threat to Bitcoin? A lot of people would argue that quantum computing can open up the door for threat vectors on Bitcoin and blockchain as a whole, but not just blockchain, a number of different technologies. However, in this video, I want to focus on the quantum threat to Bitcoin, what the community can do to mitigate it, some of the concerns raised, what is the time scale we have to resolve or mitigate these risks or threats, and what is the real threat right now? Because quantum computing is expected to take place or be available anywhere between 2027 to 2035. So what is the real threat right now for you and I, people who participate in the Bitcoin ecosystem? We're going to go over all that in today's video. My name is Vega, and this is Serpent X Tech. First, let's talk about the vulnerability to the security regarding transactions, right? So Bitcoin security relies on the ECDSA, or elliptical curve digital signature algorithm, which Shor's algorithm, which is a quantum algorithm, can efficiently break it, potentially allowing the attackers or perpetrators to derive private keys out of what's already available public keys. And believe it or not, somewhere between 25 to about 35% of public keys have already been exposed. And what governments, countries, whoever has access or accessibility to these quantum computers are doing, even though the quantum computing is not fully matured, they're just gathering data, harvesting as much of these public keys or information as possible for the possibility of cracking, breaking, and pushing through the encryption later on at a later date. A couple things that you can do is, if you have a newer type address, which is called P2PKH or P2WPKH, those addresses, if the funds are left unspent, are more hardened or more resistant. There's always a key to a lock. So anything can be cracked, especially depending on us, right, the user, because we can be easily flawed with scams, phishing attempts, whatever it might be. But those addresses are a bit more resistant. The older P2PK, well, addresses that are reused a lot, those might have their public key already exposed. So those countries, governments, agencies, or nefarious actors that have that data already and already have the public key can obviously, at a later date when quantum computing is available, brute force, get in there and take those funds. Now, this is something that we have time for. Again, a lot of people are speculating 2027 to 2035, but I think that's a bit modest. I say 2040, 2040, basically when I'm ready to retire, 2040 to 2045. At least that's when I hope to retire. We'll see. When it does come, there are some concerns, and what is the community doing to improve it, right? Well, they have a BIP, or a Bitcoin proposal, right, that's going to improve and aims to tackle the threat posed by quantum computers by phasing out Bitcoin's legacy signature schemes, which are vulnerable to quantum attacks, right, in favor of quantum-resistant alternatives. The proposal is titled Post-Quantum Migration and Legacy Signature Sunset, was drafted earlier this week, and at time of filming, that would have been early July, which is obviously made up of a bunch of people in a group in cryptography and blockchain experts, including American software engineer James Loop and Bitcoin QS founder Christian, I can't say your last name, sir, but Papa Dunius, whatever. I'm just going to call you Papa, Christian Papa. While quantum computers powerful enough to crack Bitcoin's cryptography are not yet here, recent developments have narrowed the window. Some academic forecasts suggest quantum machines capable of threatening Bitcoin could arrive as early as 2027 to 2030 per McKinsey. Bitcoin currently relies on that ECDSA, right, elliptical curve digital signature algorithm, and Shor's signatures, not Shor, Dr. SCHNORR. Somebody pronounce that correctly for me in the comments, because you know I suck at pronunciations. Anyways, relies on that to secure transactions, but still about a quarter of Bitcoin's unspent outputs have already revealed public keys on chain, making those funds particularly vulnerable to quantum adversary. A successful quantum attack on Bitcoin could result in significant economic disruption and damage across the entire ecosystem. not just trading, but mining. I want you to pick up on that because I know a lot of my viewers are miners. As far as impacts on Bitcoin mining, while theoretically the Grover's algorithm could offer quadratic step up in finding hashes for mining, this is not considered an immediate threat due to practical challenges of building and scaling quantum computers to compete with existing mining hardware. However, let's say theoretically somebody in the future has access to a quantum computer and starts to use mining hardware. And I'm just speculating that somebody in the future is going to combine a quantum computer with mining hardware to attack the proof of work ecosystem. Again, a long ways away, but is it? That's the whole reason why we're talking about this in today's video. So anyways, moving forward, what I'm focusing on is not the small scale, like educational and research quantum computers that an academic institution can get up and running for a few $1,000s. I'm talking about the high scale industrial type quantum computers that cost millions of dollars that a centralized organization, government, or country would utilize to, hey, maybe fatten up its piggy bank. Right now, I'm going to read a quote to you and also put the specifications on the phases or estimated phases on this proposal, which was an excerpt. I'll also link it down in the description. That says a successful quantum attack on Bitcoin could or would result in significant economic disruption and damage across the entire ecosystem. Beyond this impact on price, the abilities of miners to provide network security may be significantly impacted, right? The whole reason why Bitcoin is attractive, well, one of the reasons it is attractive, besides a number of others, is the security that the miners offer. And we can see here in the specification, there's 3 phases, A, B, and C, and what they do. Permitted sends are from legacy scripts to P2QRH scripts, everyone holding or accepting Bitcoin 3 years after BIP 360 implementation. Phase B, a predetermined block height or at a predetermined block height, nodes reject transactions that rely on the what would be outdated at that time ECDSA or Schnorr keys, everyone holding or accepting Bitcoin 2 years after phase A's activation. And then C, users with frozen quantum vulnerable funds and a hardware wallet seed phrase can construct a quantum safe proof to recover the funds. Users who fail to migrate funds before phase B, to be determined pending research, demand, and consensus. The community as a whole would need to work together to address this threat in the future. Not a threat right now, but a threat in the future. And it is something that you, the end user, a holder of Bitcoin, should be aware of. Now, I'm very curious as what about those individuals that have Bitcoin exposure but via ETFs? They wouldn't have any voting rights per se because they just are exposed via the ETFs. So it would be the ETF holders, right? The ARCs, the BlackRocks, to, I guess, have some sway in the conversation, some communication, some level of voting power, I guess you could say, in the consensus of Bitcoin to improve and make it more quantum resistant. The proposal also suggests a phased approach to addresses that addresses the risk posed by quantum computers. The first phase suggests stopping people from sending Bitcoin to older, less secure addresses. And then about 5 years after this change, the plan would go further by making it impossible to spend any Bitcoin stored on those addresses or, that are vulnerable or whatever, essentially frozen. These coins would be frozen, basically burned. And then later on, people that have their, as it says here, their hardware wallet, and their seed phrase have a way to construct a quantum safe proof to recover their funds. But if you don't have that, then those funds, I assume, would be inaccessible. So it would behoove you to make sure that your Bitcoin funds are on newer addresses that haven't been spent, the funds haven't been spent, and that have a little bit of resistance to them instead of some of these legacy. The longer we postpone the migration, the harder it becomes to coordinate. And I agree with that. The argument's clear. Time box plan will create certainty, align stakeholders, and minimize the risk of catastrophic quantum death. In recent opinions from Cointelegraph, David Carville CEO of Norris Protocol, said that the rise of quantum computing poses the most serious threat to Bitcoin security yet, potentially capable of breaking its cryptography or cryptographic protections within 5 years or less. He noted that recent advances like Microsoft's Majora chip, I might probably butcher all these names, have accelerated development of powerful quantum computers, which operate differently from classical machines. These quantum systems threaten Bitcoin's core security algorithms, especially as about 30% of Bitcoin coins sit in addresses that are vulnerable to these attacks. Right, so we want to move them to new wallets. Now, with all that being said, what is the real threat to Bitcoin? Well, I kind of want to throw you a curveball. Yes, we need to prepare for quantum computers to become more readily available and for centralized powers to utilize them to fatten their piggy banks instead of do what's right for the people, and start using newer address formats. We need to obviously consider the Bitcoin improvement proposal and work as a consensus, as a community, to push that through, migrate funds to the newer wallets, to more quantum resistant addresses once they come online. But the biggest threat right now is to you or I, and that is falling for fictitious requests, whether it's from an influencer, from a celebrity, from a government person, or AI generated deep fake pretending to be XYZ and trying to get you to send funds to their wallet or institution or whatever, because it's going to 10x your position, 2x your position, or secure your asset, right? We, the individual, the human element, is the weakest link of Bitcoin right now, because we are susceptible to the scams, to the phishing, to the manipulation, to the misinformation. That is the real threat right now. But we do have to consider, as quantum computers develop and become more mainstream, what that can affect, or what kind of effect that could have on Bitcoin and our assets. Will our crypto be safe? Well, I already mentioned at the beginning of the video what addresses are particularly vulnerable, or address types, and what addresses are more resistant, not 100% foolproof, but more resistant. And more importantly, there are other solutions out there. There's other chains out there that are, I guess you could say, a little bit more resistant than, say, Bitcoin. Just to name a few of them, Algorand uses a post-quantum digital signature technology called Falcon. QRL is designed, or quantum resistant ledger, is designed to be quantum resistant and uses hash-based digital signatures, or XMSS, instead of ECC. Cellframe, a third generation blockchain designed with quantum safety in mind, incorporating post-quantum cryptography, right? And then HBAR, or Hedera. Hedera uses SHA, not 256, but 384 cryptography, which is considered high resistance to quantum attacks. Again, not foolproof, but more resistant. So there are options out there, or other assets or tokens or projects or whatever the hell you want to call them, that are prepared for the quantum age. But in summary, right, mitigation solutions: post-quantum cryptography, or PQC, which is research and development into quantum resistant cryptography algorithms, or cryptographic algorithms, that are already underway, already being considered, as in the EIP, to replace the current method of ECDSA. Wallet migrations, again, in the EIP, where users are working to migrate funds from vulnerable address types to more secure ones to better protect their funds rather than leaving them. And the problem is, a lot of people that have those funds, like those old school wallets that we've been seeing funds being moved from, maybe they don't have access to it anymore. Maybe it's gone. So maybe the quantum era will bring in a time frame where somebody, right, who lost access to their funds on an old hard drive that's in a landfill, but the public key is exposed, maybe I can pay to have a institution with a quantum computer to crack or get the private key based off of the publicly accessible data, and get my funds back for a large sum of money, for a fixed cost to pay for the use of that quantum computer. So we're seeing recovery, but we also see some of the concerns or threat vectors that could happen. And then obviously the Bitcoin community working together, developers, miners, institutions, because everybody's exposed to this now, working together, and exploring different ways to better prepare Bitcoin, like BIP 360, and see what other challenges may arise and come up with other Bitcoin improvement proposals to help secure Bitcoin as the future. Because the last thing we want is for nobody to do anything, everybody to diamond hand Bitcoin because it's going to the moon, and then a large sum of Bitcoin because 35%, 25% of Bitcoin supply being exposed to quantum attacks. You imagine that amount just being liquidated by a nefarious group, nefarious country, a institution that doesn't give a damn about Bitcoin, only cares about gold or anything but Bitcoin, and wants to see Bitcoin fail. That's a large sum of money that can automatically be dumped or OTC or whatever your favorite swap place is to exchange Bitcoin to whatever other currency you want. So it's not a immediate threat, but it is something that experts are already looking into, developers, institutions, and even the government, because the government has exposure to Bitcoin. So it would be in all of our interests to work together as a community, look at the problem, develop a solution, and do what's best for Bitcoin to continue to thrive in a quantum era in the future. But that's going to do it for today's video. So do me a favor on the way out, hit that like button, make sure to get subscribed, hit the notification bell to stay up to date, as well as check out additional links in the description to help support the channel and what we do here. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.